Hello, you lovely ladies and handsome gents. How are you today? I hope you're having a wonderful day. Welcome to Talk to the Hand Reviews. I'm Bo the Reviews Lady. Let's have a little clap fest. Because why not, right? Anyways, today I want to talk to you about 10 fragrances that I used to sell behind the counter in the late 80s and 90s that used to be expensive but are now more affordable. I was back there. I remember how much these things cost. I mean, I don't remember exactly how much they cost, but I remember you had to go to the department store. You had to talk to somebody like me. You had to go, yes, I'd like that one, please. And then they'd pull it out and then you'd buy it. It wasn't like now where you can get a lot of things at places like, you know, Winners in Canada or TJ Maxx in the United States. It was harder then. I mean, there weren't a lot of fragrances available. There was no Sephora. What's a Sephora? With the advent of Sephora, it seems like that's when a lot of these fragrance companies were able to get in there and get their fragrances tried by a lot of people, because the department stores didn't necessarily allow all the fragrances that you can get at Sephora, like especially, you know, non-designer fragrances. All the fragrances that we used to sell in cosmetics and fragrance were considered designer fragrances. So these other fragrances that from all these other designer houses, or a lot of these other houses where you'd have to go, like you'd have to go to like Creed, or you'd have to go to Maison Francis Kurkdjian, you know, those kinds of things were not widely available back in the day. It was mostly just us behind the counter in the department store selling fragrances. And they used to tell us also back then that those fragrances weren't sold outside of anyone who was a specifically chosen distributor. So they were suggesting to us that if someone else tried to sell you, like Oscar de la Renta, for instance, that it wasn't necessarily the real stuff. So nowadays, I don't know, things seem to be different. A lot of these companies that belonged to some people, one company back in the day, have changed hands multiple times and now belong to other companies. So I don't really exactly know about that, but what I do know is some of these fragrances that used to be more expensive that are now more affordable. So let's get started. Not all these fragrances, oh wait, I forgot one. Now, not all these fragrances were ever necessarily considered really expensive, but they were expensive enough that you have to go into a department store and buy them there. They weren't available at the drugstore for the most part. Some of them were considered very expensive and some of them were not considered very expensive, but they were more expensive than what you can get them for now today. So I'm going to start off with the big classic. This was at one time considered the costliest perfume in the world when it first came out. I think it was did I write down? I did write it down! This fragrance came out in 1930. It is called Joy. Joy! Do you know? The reason that this fragrance was so expensive was because it had actual flowers. It was, what was it? It was, I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like thousands of jasmine flowers and like 28 dozen roses. I think that was something like that, as well as other ingredients. That's not all that's in there, but and I recently got this because I heard it's been discontinued. It was purchased by LVMH and discontinued. And then they gave Dior, they came out with something called Dior Joy, which is also now owned by LVMH. I have a long list of a lot of things that are owned by LVMH, which is kind of interesting because you think you're buying something from a different company than this, and no, it's the same company. So anyways, so it's been discontinued, but you can still get it around. You can still get some of these bottles before you simply can't. And I'm telling you, I love this fragrance so much. I never used to love it that much. I love it more now than I did. It is just the most, this is like a spring or summer garden walk where there's so much greenery in your face all at once and so much flowers that you go, oh, I hope I don't get hay fever. That is what this is. It is fantastic. I love it so much. When it first came out in 1930, it sold for $40 an ounce, and nowadays you can get this for $40. So, or did I get this one for 40? I think I got it for more than that, but I think you can get it. And I mean, it's a piece of history. It's an incredible fragrance. It still smells exactly like it used to. My taste has changed a little bit. I like it more than I used to. So, Joy by Jean Patou, number 1. Tea Rose. Tea Rose from Perfumers Workshop. We use this house behind the counter. Was never the most expensive fragrance. It was one of the more affordable fragrances back then, but it was still expensive. Nowadays you can get it pretty inexpensively. There's a website I get a lot of fragrances off of. It's out of Canada, but they do also ship to the States. So I got it from there and it was very affordable. But this to me is like the most fresh, genuine rose smell. I think people also think it smells like red roses from Jo Malone, which is kind of similar. A lot of rose fragrances I find are too sweet. This is not a really sweet rose fragrance. This is more like a natural, fresh, lemony rose. Tea Rose, love it. You can see my dent. I reach for it often. So Tea Rose, another one I sold behind the counter. Moving on. Number 3, Design by Paul Sebastian. Now, this is not what you can get now. This is my vintage bottle of Parfum. I used to work for, like I said, a couple different department stores. And when I worked for this one department store, design was my line. And so I had it, I bought and I received for free a lot of great stuff. Now this one I bought, I think it was in an oval shaped box. It had the eau de parfum, this pure perfume oil. I think it might have had a powder, it might have had a lotion. But anyhow, this little guy, see if there's that much juice left. But it's pure perfume oil, you know, it's perfume. And it still smells fantastic. And I've found Design now at out and about. I have found it at, I believe it was TJ Maxx in the United States for like a really good price, like a way better price than we used to sell it for. Like we sold it for, you know, what did it start at? Trying to remember what it started at. But now the bottles now are different. You can't really get this anymore, I don't think. I think all they have now is the eau de toilette, but it is in a beautiful little bottle, this really cute little bottle with a pretty little cap. And it's much prettier than actually the bottles we used to sell back in the day. They were tall, very kind of a simple design of bottle. The new bottles are cuter. But Design, the new Design that you can get at like TJ Maxx and places like that, it smells exactly the same. And it is a light white floral, very similar in style to Oscar de la Renta. So if you like the light florals like that, the white florals, you will like Design, I believe. And so, you know, it's a really nice one you might find when you're out and about. And it's one of those that it's a crowd pleaser for a lot of noses like it. So that's number 3, Design from Paul Sebastian. Number 4, Bluegrass from Elizabeth Arden. Good old Bluegrass. when I used to, my very first cosmetics job when I was 19 years old, I worked for a company called Ultima 2. And we worked in the same, you know how department stores, they have sometimes different cosmetic companies share the same counter space. So like, you know, if one person is on a break and, you know, if someone comes to buy Ultima 2 cosmetics and the people who work there are on break, well, the person who works for the other company, in my case it was Elizabeth Arden, can help with that person. So you kind of, even though I worked for Ultima 2, I still also worked for Elizabeth Arden a little bit. And one of the fragrances that they had, Bluegrass. Ooh. This is the most fresh, beautiful, spicy carnation fragrance. I have always loved it. But even back then in the late 80s when I first started, when I worked that particular job, we didn't carry a lot of it. We only had a little bit of it. And the lady who was the counter manager for Elizabeth Arden was really protective of it. It was just a little bit in the case because it was a really old fragrance. Oh, I forgot to tell you. It came out in 1936. It's considered a floral green. And because it came out in 1936, it had, like Elizabeth Arden, like the cosmetics company, it had a lot of elderly clientele. And so they didn't even keep a tester out because they knew that it wasn't the vibe for the people of the 80s and 90s. It was something they kept for their die-hard customers, their clientele that loved this, and they knew they're coming back every year to get it. So they kept it there. Well, this fragrance is the most beautiful, spicy carnation type of fragrance, and I love it. It still smells the same, and you can get it very affordably now. You can get it more affordably than you used to be able to, and it's a classic. It smells great. I mean, it's incredible. So Bluegrass, that's another one. By the way, Tea Rose came out in 1977 and is considered a straight floral. And also Design came out in 1985 is considered an amber floral. Okay, here's another one. First, by Van Cleef and Arpels. See the dent? There's nothing left. This is another really amazing fragrance that, let's see, when did it come out? 1976. It's considered a floral aldehyde. And the nose was Jean-Claude Elena. Elena. E-L-L-E-N-A. I had Almeras as another guy. Anyways, this fragrance to me, okay, I also used to work for this company, sort of, because when I worked for the Oscar de la Renta group for fragrances at the time, I was a promotions rep, and Oscar was our #1 fragrance, but we also promoted a number of other fragrances if people are interested, and First by Van Cleef and Arpels was one of those. This fragrance, the only thing I can compare it to is Chanel No. 5. That is how special I think it is. I think in terms of the high class vibe that you get out of Chanel No. 5, this is the same thing. It's not the same fragrance at all. It's a very different smelling fragrance, yet somehow it's the same kind of thing. So if you've never tried it, you should try it. This is also one that used to be very expensive, but you can find it here and there. I don't know where you can find it consistently, but I know it's out there. It's available, and it's much more affordable than it used to be. First by Van Cleef and Arpels. Okay, we're halfway through. Okay, number 6. Je Reviens from Worth, from the House of Worth. Oh, lovely ladies and handsome gents. This is one of my favorite fragrances. Well, they all are. They all are. But this one, I relied on it a lot. I wore a lot of it when I was younger because I was really busy. I was running around. I used to work as a performer as well, and I mean, I still do, but a lot back then. I'd run around. I'd work for my perfume jobs. I would go to an audition, or I'd go to a class, or whatever. I was always busy, and I really didn't want to smell bad. So this fragrance It smells so nice. It smells like soap, but really clean, fresh soap. And I've said before, what it reminds me of is what you'd smell like after you after you get out of the shower at the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons, you know, or any of those ritzy hotels. Because this just smells so, it just smells so classy. It smells so, it's a floral. Wait a minute. It was created in 1932. The nose was Maurice Blanchette, and it is a floral aldehyde. But it is another, back in the day we would have called it a white floral. That's what they told us to say, a white floral. You didn't have all these different categories that were so specific like they are now. They might have been that way, but they didn't tell us to present them that way. So, I don't know. But this is another one that is easily affordable, and I think I got this one from Fragrance by Canada, where I said you can get a lot of good deals. So yeah, Je Reviens. Oh my gosh, and I want to tell you something really quick about this one. I wore this forever, and I did a review on it like last year, and I never knew until then that the word Je Reviens is part of a 5-part poem. And who was it? I think it was Charles Frederick Worth was his name, I think, who started the Worth Company. He was a designer of women's clothing too. They created 5 fragrances. Each one the title was the part of a poem. And they all fit together. And Je Reviens means I'll be back. I think I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And then the last one was to you. Anyways, I forget how the poem went, but if you're interested at all in that, please check out my my Je Reviens video, where I go into quite a lot of detail about it. Anyhow, Je Reviens, worth checking out. Getting down to it now. Getting down to it. All right, next one on the list. And Klein. This is a really nice, very sweet floral. It's very sweet. And it's sweet. It's got a little bit of spice in it. Oh, it's just so pretty. I really like this fragrance. So this one, I did not personally sell behind the counter, but when I went to different department stores on behalf of Oscar de la Renta, or I also worked for Guerlain, doing the same job I did for Oscar, but I worked for Guerlain for a bit as well. This was for sale in a lot of those department stores. And I remember when it came out, I was like, oh yeah, but I wasn't, you know, I mean, I don't know if it's this way for you, but when I was younger, I was like always on a strict budget, and I was always working, and I was always running around, and I got a lot of fragrance for free because of working in the industry. So I wasn't really necessarily buying a lot of my own fragrances, but this is one that I wanted to buy and never did until recently. And I'm so glad I did. It still smells amazing. And it's just another really great one that used to be expensive and now is affordable. It came out in 1984, and it's considered a floral aldehyde. So, and Klein. There you go. Dance break! Woo! Okay, got a few left. This next one, the world knows it. Super iconic. One of the first fragrances that was considered a upper crusty hoity-toity type of fragrance. Don't tell me you ain't never heard of Giorgio. Giorgio. Oh man, like nothing else. Giorgio is so unique. Oh. And it still smells just like it used to. All these fragrances do to me. And I spend a lot of time working with those fragrances. I feel like a lot of the newer fragrances that have come out many of them still smell the same. So I don't know. I feel like even if these companies bought these fragrances and are producing them less expensively, whatever they're doing, the juice still smells good. So Giorgio, Giorgio Beverly Hills, you know how it is. It had like all the world's attention for a while there, and it was expensive, and now it's more affordable. It came out in 1981. The nose was Bob Aliano. It's considered a straight floral. I think people consider it a yellow floral, but anyhow, good old Giorgio. Love it. Still do. Okay, and this one is so special to me. Oscar de la Renta. I really loved working for Oscar de la Renta. I love the product so much. It was my mom's favorite fragrance, and it is just a beautiful feminine white floral fragrance. They consider it an amber floral. Oscar de la Renta told us it's a white floral. So whatever. But anyhow, this fragrance, I wore more of this than any other fragrance. I wore it all the time. I was doused in it working for Oscar. I had everything in the line. I had a body oil spray, which is incredible. A dry oil spray. It was so good. The creams, the powders, the Délice du Bain, which is a really neat foaming bath powder. I had everything. Shower gel, everything in this line. So I can tell you that I absolutely believe this smells just like it used to. Now, there was a viewer that I had who said she only liked the Oscar, the pure perfume oil, which most people aren't really buying pure perfume oil. I mean, they didn't used to. Nowadays, maybe people are. And that might have been different on her skin because it was the highest concentration of perfume oil. She doesn't care for this. Sounds to me like maybe she never did. But this, the Eau de Toilette, still smells the same to me. And I actually have a mini perfume. It still smelled the same. But the new version of Oscar still smells just like the old version of Oscar to me. And something interesting about it is we never had a small spray like this back when I worked for Oscar. There was only it was a little bit smaller spray that was a special edition that you could buy sometimes for promotion. But if you wanted to buy Oscar back in the day, there were two choices. Well, three really. There was the short squatty splash, which was, what was it back then? I think it started at $35. That doesn't sound like much money, but in the late 80s, I mean, that wasn't the cheapest thing around, and then so it went to that. And then if you wanted the spray, it was a big tall one. Well, I think it was it wasn't 1.7. I think it was 2.5. It was this size, the tall one. It looked like this, except it was tall. And that one was 48 or 50. I think it was 48 when I started selling it, 54 when I left. And then the next biggest size was, I think it was a 3-ounce size. It was this big, thick thing, and it started at $100. And that was a lot back in the day. I want to say another thing. I worked at a number of different malls and stores, department stores in the late 80s and 90s. And I got to tell you, back in the day, nothing cost what it costs now. And one of the stores I worked at was in the Beverly Hills area. So, I guess fragrance companies have just figured out that people will pay anything for if they really like something. So prices have, grown accordingly. But I think back in the day, people were still like, well, people aren't going to spend that much for fragrance or whatever, with the exception of pure perfume oils. Like, for instance, with Oscar, we had the 1/4 ounce size of perfume oil. What did that? I think it started at 125 for a 1/4 ounce, a little guy. Then it would go up from there. The 1 ounce was something like a couple $100. Anyways, that is the exception. But no EDT sprays, no eau de parfum sprays, none of those things cost hundreds of dollars like they do now. And, that's just my memory. So Oscar de la Renta, another affordable one. But I'm telling you, Oscar, you know this size of Oscar, I've found it for sale for $85 in Canada, 85. So it's probably 65 in the States. But I got this online and I got a really good deal on it and I didn't pay none of that price. So Oscar still is expensive and deserves to be expensive, deserves to be in the department stores still. But if you look, you can find it for a deal. Oh. Okay, getting down to the last few. Actually, there's only one left, right? But I've got a bonus one. And my last one. I also worked for this company. heureBleueByGuerlain from Guerlain. Oh, Guerlain. Oh, this fragrance is so beautiful. Oh, the first time I ever smelled this fragrance was one of my first jobs. No, sorry, my very first job. I worked at a doll museum, and there was a little old lady that worked there. The owner was also a little old lady, and her sister-in-law worked there, and she was this little lady. Her name was Louise, and she was from Louisiana, and she was really funny. She used to say the funniest things to me. One time she said, "You are the cutest little thing, but you are slow as molasses." But she was nice. I mean, yeah, sort of. I think I was 14. I worked there like off and on for a few years, but I started, I think I was 14. And she came in one day smelling heavenly, smelling like something I was like, oh, it knocked me over. And I was like, what? It's like, actually, I was like, Louise, what fragrance are you wearing? It's Guerlain's Blue Hour, she said. And yeah, so this has become, not because of that, I mean, even though that was the first experience I had with it, and then later on working for Guerlain, which at that time we weren't really promoting heureBleueByGuerlain. Guerlain was promoting Shalimar and Samsara, so that was mostly what I showed when I worked for Guerlain. But this is one that was around when I worked behind the counter, and most Guerlain fragrances you can't catch a break on, most, but this is one that you can, and it is just gorgeous. And yeah, I'd highly recommend it. And one more. This is number 11, actually. White Shoulders. Oh yes, White Shoulders from Evyan. Beautiful fragrance. Beautiful. Beautiful floral. Came out in 1945. It's considered a floral aldehyde. And by the way, heureBleueByGuerlain came out in 1912, considered an amber floral, created by Guerlain. But this fragrance, I sold it behind the counter as well. It is a beautiful, very sweet floral fragrance. It's very sweet though. It's kind of similar to, it's a little similar to the Klein in its sweetness. Some people might find it sickeningly sweet, and the thing about it is, it's called White Shoulders, right? It seems a little racist. It seems a little racist, and the story behind it is that one of the creators of the fragrance, I'm sorry, I could be getting this wrong, but the gist is that his wife was complimented. She was wearing something, I guess something like this little relief looking thing there, and he complimented, he said, I believe you have the widest shoulders I've ever seen, something like that. And I mean, I think that's cool and everything. Yeah, sure, why not call it White Shoulders? But it's a little bit, I think it excludes some people, like, from thinking, you know, I don't know, it kind of seems kind of funny, but I don't believe that it really is. And I do love the fragrance, and I did wear it a lot when I was younger, and I'm still wearing it. So White Shoulders, that's another really nice one that we sold behind the counter. That was quite a bit more expensive. It was quite a bit more expensive back in the day. So there they are, 11 fragrances that used to be expensive but are now more affordable. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, or you know any of these fragrances, or you know of other fragrances that used to be expensive but are now affordable, please do us all a favor and leave a comment down below. I very much appreciate it. I'm Beau the Reviews Lady. Thanks for coming to watch my channel, and I hope to see you next time. And don't forget to dance. Whee!